We met Pastor Hodges. It will be 31 years in August. We were first here in 1985, and so I went to the 18th Street Church one time. And then we came to this church before South Bay bought it because we were staying with friends who attended the Assembly of God church that was here. And then when we came back here, and we came on that first Wednesday night, my husband said, I remember this church. And I was like, how do you remember this church? And then when we walked in, I realized that we had come when it was the Assembly of God church. I think God probably had a plan all along for us to be at South Bay.
Everyone was super friendly. They were like, welcome, welcome. Of course, I didn't know who invited me. It was like a million Filipinos. And I didn't know who it was, but everyone was so open and so welcome. And Pastor Hodges preached, and
I guess it worked out. Here we are.
22 years later.
22 years later.
Sister Vicky gave my mom a flyer about South Bay Pentecostal Church and told her that we actually have a Christian school here. So I remember we came to church, and I was able to go to the private school, and that's when I first met Pastor.
When I got here, I walked down in the middle of service while everybody's worshiping and praying, which I learned later I was not supposed to do. And I asked Pastor to marry her.
It was in the year 1986 or 1987 when brother and sister Lynn Michi brought me here as a guest.
My first memory of Pastor Hodges was right after we got baptized. He was so excited to know it was because of my son bringing me. Even currently, like Pastor Hodges will say, hey, come here, and he'll introduce me to someone, and he'll be like, this is the woman that I told you that her son brought her to church.
We had already got an apartment, but when we got here, the refrigerator wasn't working in the apartment. I told my husband, I said, I'm going to ask if they have an ice chest that we could use because we had two little girls and we didn't have a refrigerator. So we did whenever we met Pastor and Sister Hodges and stuff. And Pastor says, well, I think we could do better than that. And he said, Brother Knobs is out of town. He has a refrigerator in his office. We'll just loan you his refrigerator. Yeah. And we loaded up Brother Knobs' refrigerator from his office.
When we were little kids, we didn't really have much growing up, and there was one Christmas morning we heard a knock on the door, and we opened up the door, and there was presents at our doorstep. And later we found out that Pastor and Sister Hodges brought those presents to me and my sister for Christmas.
With my ex-husband, I had two little kids, and I was anticipating getting a divorce. I didn't want to do it the wrong way. So I called Pastor and Sister Hodges, and I was like, I'm just going through a lot, and I need to know what to do. And at the time, I believe I was pregnant with Dana. I said, I'm at McDonald's letting the kids play. And there they came. They came and they sat there in the little kids' chairs.
And not only did he was a leader, but he always was involved. And he taught PE at South Bay Christian Academy. And he took us to the Boys and Girls Club in National City in Kibble Park. Time I remember, I just got out of high school. Him and Sister Hodges invited me to go with him to the desert. And just took me with him like I was a son.
I was amazed because he was like kind of something different when I listen and look at him. Now I know the term. My pastor is fully, richly anointed by God.
The thing I really appreciate about Pastor, I don't think I've ever heard a negative word come out of his mouth. He's always giving people the benefit of the doubt. He always wants to know the truth, never assuming.
He's just someone I look up to. One day, I can only hope to be as smart as him. His care and his passion for the word and for his church and his congregation and his integrity, that takes a lot of courage to go up there and represent not only our church but all of California, and to battle the wickedness in high places. That takes a lot of intellect, it takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage.
And I remember at one time on one of my deployments I was going to get extended for a while, And he's the one that broke it to my kids for my wife. He's the one that broke it to them, and he's the one that made sure they were okay, and he took care of them. And I'll always remember that.
He doesn't just preach, he lives it and is an example.
What's special is that he always tells you the truth. Tells you the truth in love.
That he's a pastor, and he's not going to just preach what I want to hear. He's going to preach the message that needs to be preached. He cared enough for our family that he took our situation before God, seek the throne of heaven to say what his will was for us to be done.
I appreciate his boldness and his not being afraid to tell like it is. He says what everybody needs to hear, not what they want to hear. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Growing up, like without a dad in the home, Pastor has affected my life as a godly man to look up to. Him and Sister Hodges as my example has led me to the woman I am today. Like I was always taught, look at Sister Hodges, how she is and how she reacts to things and how she talks, and just by her leadership and as a woman and then pastor as a man, the godly figure in my life, like I think that's impacted me the most.
I was blessed by his preaching and teaching, and I try my best to be a saint that he will be proud of me.
He's led it like a genuine father. He has taught us what he knows, what he stands firm in belief. He corrects us when we're wrong. He loves us through different things. Anywhere that I go, when people find out he's my pastor, they just have nothing but kind things to say about him.
If you try to go up to Pastor and try to tell him what somebody's doing or what somebody said, he's very nice, so he'd be like, okay, thank you. But he wouldn't, it would stay right there. He never forgets about us. Everywhere he goes, he never forgets about the saints of South Bay. All I know is that Pastor is so in tune with God, because when our family speaks at home, or I'm thinking something and I'm like, God, show me direction, show me something, that next message is exactly what I needed or we talked about. That's one thing how he leads it. He leads by really letting God use him.
If I can just let him know, him and Sister Hodges, I appreciate them, and I not only just looking at them as our pastor and First Lady, but as my friends. Made me feel at home. They made me feel like they care and that we're family. They've been there, in our low points and our high points. They've been there for my kids.
I would thank him for always standing for the truth, for righteousness. He's kept me grounded in the Word, and he's taught me so much from just preaching the Word of God through the pulpit.
Congratulations, pastors, on your 40th year.
We appreciate and love Pastor and Sister Hodges.
Every time we do the greetings downstairs and we shake hands, he always hugs me and say, I love you, Brother Hamilton. And I never said anything. So now I'm saying something. Our pastor, I love you too.
Honestly, when during the pandemic was one of the hardest times in my life, and for him to stand up and to be able to have this church open for us and we could have online services was the best thing that helped me through that whole pandemic. Honestly, that's what kept me. And I just want to say I appreciate you, Pastor and Sister Hodges, so much.
He makes it personal for everybody. Even though there are hundreds of us here, he looks at your problem personally. He's a great leader. And the way that he leads, I would follow him and support him in anything he does.
He always displayed Jesus Christ's love to everyone.
Thank you for loving me for who God made me, for allowing God to use me the way that he does, as where other pastors are very controlling, and believing in me and my family, for always being encouraging, and Sister Hodges as well.
I love you guys very much, and I'm glad I'm still here to enjoy this 40th celebration for you. Love you, Pastor and Sister Hodges.